All right, welcome to the Krueg Show on a Thursday night. Larry Kruger, Vish Kumaran. Always love talking Niner ball with Vish, and he's here for the next hour as we break it all down for you on the Krueg Show. And the Krueg Show has a new title sponsor, and it's Pig and a Pickle. That's right, Pig and Pickle Barbecue, phenomenal barbecue. Check them out. They're in Emeryville. They're in Marin County. They got 2 locations. They're open 7 days a week in Marin County, in Corte Madera, and they're open 5 days a week in Emeryville. And, man, if you love barbecue ribs, barbecue brisket, chicken, sausages, everything's homemade. The brisket chili is amazing. The potato chips that they cook in beef fat are just absolutely mouth-watering. Potato salad's incredible. But the brisket, I mean, I love the ribs. I love the chicken. Don't get me wrong. But the brisket is absolutely second to none. So check them out. As I said, 7 days a week in Marin County and Corte Madera. They got a great location right there near the mall. And then they're in the public marketplace at in Emeryville, and they're open 5 days a week in Emeryville, closed on, I believe, Monday and Tuesday, but open the rest of the time in Emeryville. So check them out. Pig and a Pickle, the title sponsor of the Krueg Show going forward. Thanks to Damon and Mary, the owners of Pig and a Pickle, for being proud sponsors of the Krueg Show. All right. Happy Thursday, everybody. A lot of interesting things in Niner land, and I want to start with this one, Vish. Vish, good to see you, by the way. Great to see you. How are you?
It's good to see you too. If I'm not excited about Pig and a Pickle, now I am. Like, I never thought about Pig and a Pickle before today, but now I want to go try it.
Yes, you need to try Pig and a Pickle. It is the best barbecue you are ever going to find, for sure. Two locations, Corte Madera and Emeryville. All right. Trey Lance, Brock Purdy, Trey Lance. You know, basically the biggest takeaway of the Shanahan Lynch presser is that they want to go forward with these 2 young quarterbacks. Shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. They've kind of structured their team around, hey, we'd like to sign Ayuk, we'd like to re-sign Bosa, and obviously that having 2 quarterbacks on rookie deals makes that very much much easier to do than if you try to go after an Aaron Rodgers, a Tom Brady, or any veteran quarterback making $20 million. So that's the plan. Interestingly enough, there's a lot of talk of who is the number 1 quarterback going into next year. Now, we don't know how long Brock Purdy's going to be out. Kyle Shanahan seemed to think it would be 6 months, but we don't have a definitive word yet from Purdy's doctors on exactly what procedures he's going to have done on that elbow and exactly what his time frame is. But Shanahan seemed very confident. We also got a little timeline on Trey Lance at the press conference that it'll be 3 or 4 weeks, and then Trey will be ready to go for OTAs, which start in April. And there's April OTAs, May OTAs, and then, of course, training camp begins in July. But the question is, who is the starting quarterback? And Matt Mayoko, in an article that I'm reading just, like within the last half hour, who covers the 49ers for NBC Sports Bay Area, our good friend Matty Moe, says, I think there will be a lot of pissed off. He's quoting a 49er player here who was quoted as saying, I think there will be a lot of pissed off people in this locker room if Brock Purdy is not the starter next season. That's pretty interesting. Okay. I also heard, I guess that's basically what I'm hearing. So this is all part of Matt's podcast. I've yet to hear the podcast, but does that surprise you?
No. Players want to win. That's what they want to do. And they don't care really who the quarterback is. As much as people think, players are really invested. First of all, it's not their decision, right? And as much as people think they're really invested and interested, ultimately they're most focused on doing their job. And they might have an opinion on other people's job, but ultimately their first focus is on doing their own job. Otherwise they're cut and they can't provide for their family. And I'm not surprised because, Brock Purdy has proven some things in the NFL that Trey Lance has not proven yet, right? First of all, he stayed healthy for a longer period of time. Unfortunately, Trey Lance got injured multiple times. I don't want to call him injury prone or anything like that, but he's also not proven he can stay healthy, right, and play the full season yet. It's just he hasn't done it yet. And I believe he can. The other thing is, when you're comparing the two, right, Brock Purdy has proven the 49ers can win with him. They went 7-0 with him under center until he ultimately got injured on the sixth offensive play or third, whatever offensive play against Philadelphia. And so when you take all of that into account, Larry, you completely understand why the feeling is that right now. The way I see it too, Larry, is because you said a lot at the beginning, and there's maybe some more stuff that you want to get into, and we will get into it. But the way I see it is that if Trey Lance comes in OTAs, right, he's super sharp. He's fully recovered. His ankle is functioning the same way, and he's super sharp. He's super accurate. He's throwing the ball great. He's processing great. He's understanding everything. Then whatever this opinion, Larry, it could complete. It's not about Trey Lance or Brock Purdy or liking Brock Purdy or Trey Lance. It's about thinking which quarterback is going to give your team the best chance to win. Brock Purdy has proven that to these guys over Trey Lance yet. So the way I see it is it's not really a controversy unless Trey Lance comes into training camp or goes through this offseason, proves that, to his teammates and his coaches that he's better than Brock Purdy.
I agree. I mean, I always think the biggest, the most overstated thing there is the stated pecking order going into camp. Why? Because, I mean, there's going to be a competition. Now, sometimes there isn't a competition. Like last year, for example, you had Brock Purdy and you had Trey Lance, and there was no competition. Trey was the starter. Brock was a 7th round pick just trying to make the roster.
Mm-hmm.
Jimmy was on a side field, and it really wasn't a competition. This summer, Brock and Trey sound like they'll both be on the field, and if they are, they'll be competing to see who's the starting quarterback. And how you play in practice and how I mean, as Harbaugh used to say, iron sharpens iron. I think this is Niners win for the Niner fans, because the best of Joe Montana came out after Steve Young was there to compete with him. And I think the best of Brock Purdy will come out if Trey Lance is competing with him, and the other way around as well. The best of Trey Lance will come out with Brock Purdy there competing with him. So I think it's a good situation, to be completely honest, as they compete.
When you're talking about just the competition aspect,
yeah.
Right? Brock Purdy competed last offseason to make this team. So this is not new for him. He's been competing basically since he joined Iowa State, because even at Iowa State, when he was entrenched as the long-term starter, when you don't have, the ideal quote-unquote physical profile for a quarterback, you always feel like they're going to look to replace you with somebody bigger, somebody with a bigger arm. So he's proven that to them. Trey Lance has competed too his entire life. I don't want to discredit him, but it is a little bit different, right? Because the first 2 years, he was guaranteed to be on this roster. He was guaranteed to start last year. He was, guaranteed to be on this roster and get a few snaps as a rookie because of his draft status. Whereas Purdy, even this last offseason, right? Like you said, bring out the best of him. We saw him already do so well in a camp-like competition, because really him and Sudfeld were in a competition with Sudfeld, half given the job with this contract before the offseason even started, and he still won that.
It is interesting, though, that, people would have a player would have such a strong opinion that people would be pissed off if Brock's not the starter, but Brock earned it on the field. And, the one thing is, starters really aren't anointed. It's earned on the practice field or on the playing field. And I think Purdy's won them over. Now, Paul Perriman says best case scenario is Purdy comes back mid-season and Lance has played really well. I'm not sure, maybe in under what, why is that the ideal? To me, the ideal is that, they both come back in training camp and they push each other to be great, and the 49ers have a phenomenal season with whomever wins that job. That's how I see it. But there is a feeling among the fans. I mean, I'll say this. If your goal is to trade Trey Lance, yeah, then I think that probably is the best case scenario, to have Trey play really well and then Brock come back, because Brock's established himself. Trey hasn't. If Trey plays well, he'll establish himself. He'll increase his trade value. Let me ask you this. How long do you predict Purdy and Lance go forward together competing for this quarterback position? Do you think this is just this is going to
I,
be the way it is
I
going forward for multiple seasons? Do you think this is a prove it kind of a summer for one of them? Do you think that the Niners would trade either one of them? How do you think they're Niners?
yeah,
I
I
mean,
think
like
it's
3
this
years from
season,
now, are they
Larry.
both on the Niners?
No. It's this season. This is the
This
prove
season.
it season. It's either one of them. We'll find out this season, or maybe it's neither of them. But I think in the case that it's neither of them, Purdy will remain the backup because he'll be 2 years into a deal that puts him as a 7th round pick. And even if he's not your future long-term starter, Larry, at the very least, he's already proven that he is one of 64 in the NFL, which means he's one of the 64 QBs that should have a job, right? No matter the price, because he's one of the 64 best, no matter what. I think that proves that. Lance's case, I think they would look to move him into his 4th year if he's not the guy. Just try and recoup any value you can get. Not that he hasn't proven he can be the backup. It's just contractually and financially, Purdy makes a lot more sense. And then you figure out whoever is going to be your starter. But to me, Larry, it's either or this year. You're going to find out. And I think even if it's Lance, I could envision the scenario where Purdy at least stays on and then goes somewhere else after he signs, whatever contract. Especially if it's just Lance proves himself ultimately and they go with him. But if it's Purdy, I think Lance, if he doesn't prove himself to be the starter after this year, I don't think he'll be a 49er in 2024 and beyond.
Did you see the press conference?
Yeah, I did see the press conference, Larry. And
Shanahan did together.
Yeah, I did see the press conference.
What's your takeaway?
Honestly, my takeaway one is, Shanahan is clearly, tired from the season, exhausted, but he's also quite upset about how it. And he was a little testy in the press conference. Lynch was as classy as ever, but my biggest takeaway is that they seem to have a different confidence for not even knowing what decision the guy's going to make, that Brock Purdy is going to be ready for them by training camp. That was my takeaway. That was kind of my one resounding takeaway. Us here talking about different timelines, what kind of veteran quarterbacks they could sign, because I do think there's a few veteran quarterbacks on this market right now who are talented, found success in other places, that if you bring them here with these weapons in this system, they can do that. They're maybe like borderline starter type guys. But that was my biggest takeaway, Larry. The fact that they were like, no, we'll find out on the veterans. We think we have 2 starting quarterbacks. To me, it sounds like they feel like Brock Purdy is going to be back for training camp. They have full confidence and they're going to be able to find out between these
Vish,
2 guys.
are you hardwired? Are you hardwired in here? To your Wi-Fi or whatever? Because you're glitching quite a bit. Someone said they say, I think it's his Wi-Fi, or it says Vish.
Should I reload back in maybe?
Yeah, maybe reload. And I'll read some of the chats while Vish reloads. And we got a bunch of people in the chat, and thanks to everybody who was in the chat. Oh, wait a second. Vish is back.
Are we good?
I don't know. We'll see. We'll see when you start talking.
All right.
Are you hardlined in there, or are you Wi-Fi?
No, it's just AT&T Wi-Fi, man. When you move out of your house, and I don't have roommates either anymore, right? So I got to pay for this stupid AT&T Wi-Fi. You're not sponsored by AT&T, right, Larry?
Not yet.
It's really bad Wi-Fi. I don't like it. I pay quite a bit, but it's, I guess, the most ideal for someone that's living in a single bedroom and whatever. But I don't like it. No, Larry.
We got this super
aggravates
chat.
Me.
Yeah. We got this one it says, Vish and Krueg, you're the best. Can you imagine the 49ers signing Reddick and trading Bosa? No, I cannot. You get a great DN plus first-round picks for less money. Yeah. Scotty's got a lot. Scotty, I appreciate the donation, but
Larry,
no.
If you don't mind, there was one more angle I wanted to touch on, and I want to touch it on with you.
Yeah.
Particularly going back to that Mayoko quote. Because to me, that Mayoko quote, while we can talk about it from a football sense, and we did, right? I think there's a psychology to this also. And I think there's a psychology about how this team feels a little bit about how this quarterback situation was handled. And I think there might be some misdirected, I don't want to say anger because I don't think it's an anger, but some misdirected cries of unfairness that go to Trey Lance, but really are at Kyle Shanahan. But Trey Lance ends up being the collateral for it with quotes like this in the media, quotes like what was said to Mike Silver after the game. So I really feel like this football team after the 2020 season, Larry, when you study that, when you just look at them from a psychological perspective, felt like the only thing that went wrong in 2020 was that everybody got hurt. They didn't feel like the quarterback was an issue. The coaching staff and the front office disagreed. So I think the team was not happy that they made that move up because they felt like, hey, Jimmy took us to the Super Bowl, whatever. We were only not good because we were all hurt, not because Jimmy was bad, right? That was their impression. So I think there was a little bit of that there. Then they pick Trey Lance. They do this thing. I feel like the entire 2-quarterback thing, Trey Lance getting snaps on the first red zone possession, right? And then them letting him run that little play action play with a little whip route to return route to the backside to Trent Sherfield. That's wide open, pitch and catch as easy as it gets. And he scores the first touchdown of the season. And then suddenly he's gone, never to be found except for that one run against Green Bay. And he's not playing, right? And you had the reports that veterans told Kyle to not do this 2-quarterback thing and all of that. I think they were kind of upset that they went up and picked him. And then they felt like he took something that was Jimmy's. And then this offseason, I feel like ultimately they made it so far once again with Jimmy, which then I feel like proved something to these veteran players that, see, we win with Jimmy's here. And then Jimmy was gone and they just installed Trey Lance and they were like, well, he never beat out Jimmy for this role. Like, and he was just given it. Right. And I think that's what led to some of it. And then you get to hear where we are finally. I think this quote is that it's again, he's just not gotten the opportunity to prove himself to this football team. And I feel like the circumstances of where he was drafted and how he was drafted, and given the dichotomy also of how the outside world talks about Jimmy Garoppolo compared to how that team feels about Jimmy Garoppolo as a human being, it leads to these little quotes like this that we constantly seem to get. And they all seem like they're negatives at Trey Lance, but I don't think anybody dislikes Trey Lance at all. I just think it's this entire situation that creates this kind of negative energy towards him that I don't even think is directed in any sort of malicious way towards him. What are your thoughts on that? And do you think that that cloud is going to once again be over this team now that he's once again just instilled as the starter this offseason because Brock Purdy got hurt?
Well, ultimately, he's going to, you can be the off-season starter, but I think when Brock is healthy, I think all the veteran players expect him to be the starter. Right. And I would guess if, let's just say, Trey's healthy the entire OTAs, Brock, let's say, gets healthy, for training camp. I think the veterans, if they're, they have to start either with one guy as the 1 and the other guy as the 2, or literally on equal ground, and they're literally 50-50 splitting the reps. My guess is that based on how he played in the second half of the year, that Brock Purdy will get the first go around at the starter reps come training camp. That would be my guess.
I agree with you.
I think if he doesn't, there might be some pushback.
I agree with you. And I think that's just a case of where they are now too, right? Like, I think ultimately that doesn't mean Brock Purdy is the long-term starter. It just means right now he's ahead of Trey Lance. It still means he has to prove himself as the starter, but as long as he comes in and does his job, he will be the starter. And the only way Trey Lance overtakes him, right, is unless he plays way better. But Larry, what did you think of my entire psychological evaluation there? Do I have a future in it? Did I break?
Yes,
do you think that was an adequate look at how the
Dr.
Niners
Melfi,
players might be feeling?
You're Dr. Melfi and Tony Soprano, and you're analyzing feelings, and there's a lot of layers to this. I'll say that. I really believe that. And I think one that I'd like to discuss is, now I don't necessarily agree with this article or this assessment, but Ann Killian wrote a story saying that Jimmy Garoppolo deserved a better farewell than what Kyle Shanahan said at the press conference. And it harkens back to when Eddie D basically told Mark Trestman the Niners offensive coordinator, who was being criticized heavily at the time. When somebody asked about him at an end of the year presser, Eddie grabbed the mic up on the dais with multiple people there and just said, he's gone. He's gone. Like he was the boogeyman, Mark
Right.
Trestman. Well,
I've seen
Shanahan
this.
was asked about Garoppolo, and hey, could you envision any scenario in which you bring Jimmy back to the team? And instead of giving him his flowers or saying anything nice about him, he says, no, I don't see any scenario of that. And that was it. That was all he said. In other words, goodbye, Garoppolo. And Ann's theory is that, Kyle owed Jimmy more than that. And it's an interesting theory. I think that's a touchy-feely way of looking at things, but she could be right from the standpoint of Jimmy has allies in the room, and those allies include many, many players on the team, but a few that stand out: Kyle Juszczyk,
Kittle.
definitely George Kittle, and
Debo
there's a
likes
few
him
others.
a lot.
Bosa. I mean, there's probably a bunch of others, but there's definitely he has his allies on the team. Are they going to view, Shanahan as callous, especially when you combine that with Jimmy Ward's assessment of their meeting when he went on IG and basically said, man, he was cold. I said, I wanted to play safety. And he said, oh, you're going to ride the bench. And I'll get to that in a minute and we'll get into this more detail. But do you think in any way the players, I'm in the locker room and the players seem like they're 100% behind Shanahan, but do you think there's any fallout from what he said about Garoppolo, where he was just very terse and very short and very cold? Did he owe Garoppolo Garoppolo did take him. They did go to the Super Bowl with Jimmy. Did he owe him hey man, Jimmy's been phenomenal. We wish him the best. Did he owe him more than what he gave yesterday at the presser?
Yeah. So there's two parts to that question, right? The first part is the latter half, what you were saying. I agree with Ann Killian, actually. I did not read this article. I didn't even think about it at the time. But when you put it together like that this is probably the last time they're talking about Jimmy Garoppolo, yeah, 100%. I think Shanahan was in the wrong. I don't think he realized that in that moment either, that those were going to be his last words on Jimmy Garoppolo. I think if he did, he might have done exactly what Ann Killian talked about. But no matter what you think of Jimmy Garoppolo, and I've been one that, with whatever little following and little I've done this, I've been critical of him. There's been many that have been critical of him. He handled himself with class, and the 49ers had a lot of success with him under center, right? Both of those two things cannot be disputed. And then he did play a part in the culture that the 49ers have built. You can give him credit for it too, right? How unselfish he was, how even keel he is, how egoless he seems to be, right? He was able to laugh off Teddy Bradshaw, making the joke in the NFC Championship game after he threw the ball 8 times, saying like, oh, is your arm even tired? I could have gone out there and did what you just did. Terry Bradshaw 70. I think a lot of quarterbacks would have not been able to laugh off that moment, but Garoppolo seems to be that kind of human being where he laughed it off. So in a lot of ways, he, handled himself so well in the time he was here. I agree. He definitely deserved more. Now, to the second part of your question, which was in regards to, what was it?
The second part of the question
was Shanahan right? The effect of this on the locker room. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, so are guys going to view Shanahan as being not player friendly? I mean, Amar Singh says players love Kyle. There's no doubt.
No,
and Kyle has relationships with them. But do you think the fact that he just gave him kind of a one sentence sign off, that some of the other guys in the room were like, hey man, if he signs off on Jimmy publicly like that, he probably going to do the same to me. Maybe he's all about him. Maybe I'll be all about me.
So I think I agree with you, but I think as long as he continues to do his job as a play caller and a head coach of this football team at a high level, nobody's going to care. But Larry, the moment they start losing a little bit, right? Things aren't going exactly right. Oh, you best believe people are going to start pointing to this kind of stuff and saying this is the problem with Shanahan, right? With Belichick, it was always the Patriot way. He's the smartest guy ever. He's the evil genius. 1 year, right? Last year they made the playoffs. The COVID year, they went 500 with Cam Newton having COVID half the year. And then 1 year, Larry, they have a losing season. They have a couple of ugly losses, compounded with all the special teams errors. And how many different stories from Boston did we get coming out about Belichick, how rigid he is, the Patricia offensive coordinator stuff. So to me, it's very simple, Larry. As long as Shanahan is calling plays at a high level and the 49ers are winning, nobody's going to really be too bothered by this stuff. But the moment the Niners have a 3-14 season, oh, you best believe we're going to hear how Shanahan's difficult. He
Right.
can be terse. He can be, he can be curt. He can be this.
Cold,
he can be that.
he's cold,
Right.
he's calculating.
Right.
All right. What about Jimmy Ward on Instagram said that he went to Kyle and told Kyle that he wanted to play free safety. And that Kyle told him, so are you saying that you want to ride the bench? Well, Jimmy plays free safety. Tayshaun Gibson was the free safety after they moved Jimmy to the slot corner. This thing is really an interesting dynamic because I think most people watch that IG and think, man, the Niners don't like Jimmy Ward. And man, Jimmy Ward doesn't like the Niners and he's leaving in free agency. Okay. I think that's what most people think.
Yeah, no.
But let me tell you my read on it. Okay. And I looked up the numbers today. The Niners moved Jimmy Ward from free safety to slot corner. Okay. When they had the injury to Mosley. Ward, right now, the highest paid slot corner in the league makes $9.8 million. That is equal to the 16th highest paid safety in the league, which happens to be Jimmy Ward. Okay. The highest paid safety in the league is Derwin James. He's making $19.1 million. Do you think it's possible that the 49ers move Jimmy Ward from free safety to slot corner because they like him, yet they don't want to pay him $20 million? So they don't want to pay him a commensurate with the top safeties and have him paid, let's say, $16, $17, $18 million. They'd rather overpay him for being, make him the highest paid slot corner and maybe pay him $10 to $12 million.
Yeah.
And they're therefore keeping him on the team. It plays like they don't like Jimmy and that Shanahan played a super hard ball with Jimmy. But I really think this is their salary cap attempt to put Jimmy in a role and then justify paying him what they want to pay him, which is more like $10, $12 million in that range, instead of 15 to 18, which is south of what the top safeties make. I actually look at this maneuvering as them kind of, trying to still afford Jimmy and trying to keep Jimmy, not get rid of Jimmy. What's your read on it?
Yeah, so I actually know this story quite well. Not some of the stuff Jimmy Ward shared on IG, some of the stuff he didn't. So I don't know what I can really say about this, but I do think $10 to $12 million is a little bit rich compared to how the 49ers went to him. He mentioned on his IG, it was an official offer. They went through his position coach, but I think it was probably somewhere. I have good reason to guess that it was close to 6.5 million. That would be my guess. Just based on,
which would be a pay cut.
Right. It would be a pay cut. But the point was, I do think that part of it was definitely the overall theme of having him come back and play nickel was some of it having to do with this contract, right? Even if he goes and balls out at nickel, you feel like you can still make a competitive offer to him this offseason because he might be viewed as the nickel entering free agency. But if he goes and balls out at safety, he immediately, his starting price starts what he's getting paid right now, which is about $12 million, right? And he's going to start right back there because this is his last shot at a payday. And I thought some of the stuff that went on with Jimmy Ward, not just Shanahan's comment, I thought was a little bit badass, actually. Like the fact that he said that, like he's being as honest as possible. There is a business aspect to football that I think fans sometimes diminish its value, but a lot of these conversations are a part of it, and these things happen. And
Do
they're
you think
all
Gibson, though, is better than Ward?
no, he's absolutely not. I
He's
just
not.
think that that's how the conversation happened because of exactly what you said. And I think going back, I thought some of the stuff with Jimmy Ward was a little extra this year. Like, he's the longest tenured player on this team. He's been such a good player for so long. He's been a leader. He's battled through so much. He's always put it on the line. Having him play kickoff coverage and stuff like that this season, I thought was a little bit unbecoming of the 49ers. Like, you don't make Jimmy Ward, your longest tenured player, a guy who's been there, been through it all, one of your veteran team captains out there in kickoff coverage. So in a lot of ways, I respect Jimmy Ward for how he handled this. I know a lot of people are salty at him because of his honesty, but I actually thought, amidst all these feelings he might have had, and he shared some of them very bluntly on IG Live, the way he handled himself as a teammate, as a member of the 49ers, to the media, as a leader, I thought was all very classy. And he went and did his job at a high level this season, right? He started off, it was rough when he started off. The first 2 games at nickel were not good. The games after that, he was awesome. He was awesome against the run. I thought, other than Mike Hilton, I don't know if there's a better nickel. Taron Johnson in Buffalo. Those are the 3 guys who played the run
He got exposed
at a high
against
level.
Kansas City. He struggled against Kansas City.
First game, though, right? First game, new position. The way he adjusted, I think if they had played Kansas City in the Super Bowl, Jimmy Ward would have played a much, much, much better game, Larry, this time around. And I thought he played terrific through the second half of the season. I thought the second half of the season, him or Mooney Ward were probably the best player in their secondary because Hufanga fell off a little bit. He had some mistakes. He had some issues with his discipline. I thought Gibson played solid from snap 1 to snap end, but I thought there were a few times where Gibson's lack of just speed and athleticism hurt the 49ers in the back end. 30, 40-yard plays if Jimmy Ward's back there because he can run the guy down and takes a better angle, and it's a 70-yard touchdown with Trent Sherfield because Gibson can't run him down. And so
Gibson's got better ball skills, but Ward's a better player all the way around.
Can we say that though, Larry? This year, the ball was finding Ward a little bit, and he was, other than the
Gibson had more picks anyway, didn't he?
True,
Sure.
no doubt. But
Gibson's
Ward
got
had
30 picks career,
right.
So,
but there were a lot of Larry, more often this year than I feel like in years past. There were just more errant throws, ball up in the air. Like a lot of Gibson's picks was ball up in the air and he's center field calling a fair catch on it. Yep. And those were Ward's picks this year too, where pressure comes and quarterback goes hot and he's just sitting there in zone and they throw it right to him, right? He had a bunch of picks. He had 4 picks just like that. I think the best example of all I'm saying with that is just that when the ball finds Ward, he's capable of catching it too. And this year the ball found him and look, Jimmy Ward can get picks as well.
Yeah, he was good this year. Christopher Sadro says the organization and the players have never supported Trey Lance. Unfortunate situation for the young man. Trade him away where he will be supported. I don't really agree with that at all. Francisco Lopez, how patient will the Yorks be with Shanahan? I'm going to make you Jed York. And Kyle Shanahan comes in for his end of the year review. What do you say? What do you say? Jed's all about winning Super Bowls. They didn't win the Super Bowl. They got close again. They came 1 win away from going to the Super Bowl. What are you saying to Shanahan? Is it all congratulatory? Is it, you know what? I want that Super Bowl. When do you think we can get it? I mean, how many years does Shanahan, nobody has they all say, hey, you're only renting the seat. Nobody stays forever. If you're Jed, and I'm making you Jed here, how patient are you going to be with Shanahan? You give him 3 years, 5 years, 6 years. He doesn't get an endless contract. Eventually, he's got to produce a title.
Yeah.
What's the dialogue?
I don't know if I'm looking that far down the road. I feel like a lot of times you do have to as an owner because you're dealing with the contract situation. You don't want to be paying off a coach. So Jed York has certainly proven that he has no problem paying off coaches. I mean, that's basically all he's done in his tenure as the 49ers owner is just play off coach after coach after coach. But that bad joke aside, Larry, I think the conversation with me and if I was Jed York and Shanahan is less away from this year. I know all he's accomplished. I know the level of organization, the credibility he's brought to the 49ers organization and everything he's done for, parenthetical me, who's Jed York, right? But the number one thing that I would be talking to him if I was Jed York is You got to figure out the quarterback situation. My goal by 2024, one thing I would tell Shanahan is I would say, like, I feel like if you look at the 49ers, you look at Shanahan and you look at his time with the 49ers, what's the one thing, Larry, what would you say if I had to if I had to say, Larry Kruger, give me one reason why Kyle Shanahan hasn't won a Super Bowl with the 49ers? What would you say?
He hasn't had the quarterback.
Quarterback, right? That's your answer. It's that simple. This year was still about the quarterback because Brock Purdy got hurt, Jimmy Garoppolo got hurt, Trey Lance got hurt. It was still about the quarterback. Last year, the year, 2021 was about the quarterback with Jimmy Garoppolo. 2019 was about the quarterback with Jimmy Garoppolo. So when I can give you that answer, if I'm Jed York, the number one thing I tell Kyle Shanahan is by 2024, I need an answer at the quarterback position. We can't keep going in offseason after offseason because it happened in 2018, right? When Garoppolo was coming off the injury, that's when we started getting these kind of rumors. There was the Chris Mortensen report about Garoppolo. He had a rough camp. There was some Mike Silver reports about how Shanahan really likes Nick Mullins, and if Garoppolo doesn't pick it up, he could be benched. They could pull the plug on him early. Then they started 8-0 with Garoppolo, and everything changed. Then we go into 2020. They lose the Super Bowl. There's a lot of bad press with Garoppolo and his play in the playoffs and how bad he was in the Super Bowl, the entire Brady thing. Then we go into 2021. They go swing and miss on Stafford, not swing and miss on Watson. Watson turns out to be, a very creepy human being. Then they go up into the draft. It's Mac Jones. No, it's Trey Lance. Then it's Trey Lance. You have this quarterback controversy. Then you go into this offseason. It's Trey Lance. But Garoppolo never leaves. Then you go into this season. They get hurt, and you have this. By 2024, Shanahan should have an answer for me. It's been 6 years. He's done everything right except handle the quarterback position, the most important position you could argue in sports. Larry, if I'm Jed York, I need an answer. I need to know who the guy is, and I need to know what Shanahan's plan is with that guy and how he's going to find a way to win long-term with that guy. But you need to find that guy. I can't keep doing this. I can't keep trading 3 picks for Trey Lance, paying Jimmy Garoppolo $100 million, do this, do that, try and trade for this guy. You got to find the answer at some point.
Didn't they find it this year?
Nah, you can't say that. The guy's
no?
hurt. Guy's hurt.
The guy went 8-0 and won 2 playoff games and then got knocked out. Never really beaten, really. I mean, it wasn't like Brock Purdy threw 4 picks.
I agree, Larry, but they've been through this before, right? Jimmy Garoppolo went 5-0. They thought they had the guy. They paid him. He wasn't the guy. You have to prove it over a longer period of time. Brock Purdy has proven that he can be the guy, but a lot of people can be the guy. Only few end up being
Who's
the guy.
the third quarterback? Who is the third quarterback? We've got a question here. Here it is. Who are you going to start if Purdy is out? No choice but Trey. Will Belmonte. I really think that one thing the 49ers should have learned from, you can learn something when you lose. It's hard to learn things when you win. You notice that? But it's really easy to learn things when you lose. Something about losing makes the lesson stick.
It humbles you, right?
It humbles you, but it also shouts out loudly, this is the problem. And to me, this losing this round, or losing this, to the Eagles, told me 2 things. Javon Kinlaw is a bust, must be replaced, and that's a primary need. Now you have to have a big-time defensive tackle, whether it's Deron Payne in free agency or Poona Ford, or I kind of like the Chiefs kid, Colin Saunders. You got to find a big boy next to Armstead. And the other takeaway is that everybody who plays quarterback for you, you've got to be able to win with. There's no use, zero value in having a quarterback on your roster whose job it is to play quarterback, but you cannot win with him. Every quarterback you need to be able to win with. Because the reality is, a lot of people want to say Shanahan gets the quarterback hurt. Well, I looked up the NFL teams that used 3 quarterbacks this year.
Here they are. NFL history, right?
Niners, Bears, Colts, Commanders, Dolphins, Jets, Panthers, Rams, Ravens, Titans, Texans, and there are more.
Can we talk about why it is? I've been trying to explain this to people for 3 years. And people always keep going back to, they say, oh, the 49ers offensive line sucks. No, it doesn't. Relative to the NFL, it's actually really good. Offensive line play across the NFL sucks. Larry will know because he likes evaluating offensive line people before the draft. The prospects that are coming out are not as gifted. They're not very good. College offenses, right, are so simplified. They really only do one run play or two run plays, and they only, they do a lot of, scat protection, which is just 5-0, right? Five guys, you block whoever's in front of you. It's pretty simple. They do that a lot. So you're not like the development scale for offensive linemen. And then the D-line talent is the best I think it's ever been, Larry. The number of teams with two good pass rushers in the NFL is scary. And because the offensive line play sucks so much as the league is doing to protect quarterbacks, the defensive line play is so overwhelmingly more gifted than the offensive line play in the modern NFL. And there's very few teams with very good offensive lines. In fact, I would say there's only one or two. And one of them is in the Super Bowl. It's Philadelphia. Because of all of that, Larry, I feel like offensive line play is not good at all in the league. And I think that's why quarterbacks are getting hurt so much. That's why so many teams are using so many quarterbacks. And I think that brings you to this question, right? Which is, Will Belmonte's, who starts if Purdy's out? No choice but Trey. I think the 49ers will be in the veteran quarterback market. But Larry, if I'm a veteran quarterback, one of these guys that's going to be in the market like Sam Darnold, whose career is like completely lost at this point, but he was talented enough to once be the third overall pick, even though he hasn't been good at all. I would sign with the 49ers for cheap. Their quarterback situation is a question mark. He's still pretty young. He's still got some talent. You got to feel like if there's a place a quarterback can succeed, it's with these receivers, this running back, this system, this coach, the way they run the ball, the way they protect the quarterback in terms of, not protect the quarterback in terms of protecting him, protecting him in terms of the run game. I'm saying, like, because the Niners are going to look to sign the backup for $1 to $2 million, right? It's going to be in that range because they feel like they have two quarterbacks that are going to automatically be in front of him. I'm saying from that perspective, when I know that already exists for the 49ers, one of those guys should take that money and just come here, because if you get an opportunity, but they're going to have the vision. Here, right. If you get the opportunity to start here, whether it's through injury, whether it's through you having a good camp or the system really clicks, there's an opportunity to completely 180 your career. So I wouldn't be shocked, Larry. I know I said a lot there between offensive line play sucking, how the draft prospects aren't that good. And
so you want Sam Darnold?
But not Sam Darnold. I'm just giving an example.
Well, who do you want? In an ideal world, who do you want?
Give me a list of the veteran quarterbacks.
All right, I'm going to give you the list. I'm going to give you the list of the guys I think are realistic. I think guys like Darnold are just too expensive.
They will be too, ultimately.
Starter money, or if not starter money, close to starter money.
They're going to be the $6, $7, $8 million backup, which the Niners can't afford.
The Niners are this quarterback job is going to be $5 million or less.
Agreed.
Okay, so this is the list. I've got 6 guys that I think you could get for $5 million or less. Tell me what you think. Andy Dalton, he's 35, played for the Saints this year. Right. Niners beat him. The red rifle. Is that what they call him? Red rifle?
Right, the red rifle.
Taylor Heineke, Washington. He's 29. He started before. Nate Sudfeld. If you like Nate Sudfeld so damn much, you can bring him back. Easton Stick, who was, knows Trey, and they have a friendship, I think, going back to North Dakota State.
Right.
If you're trying to make Trey comfortable.
Really liked Easton Stick.
And he's pretty athletic. He's he's 27. Gardner Minshew.
He's gonna be too expensive. He's gonna get premium backup money.
Possibly. He didn't make big premium money this year. And then Jarrett Stidham.
Right.
Jarrett Stidham.
I think of those guys, Larry, I actually think the most likely is Stidham. Because I think what the Niners are looking for is a guy that's possibly talented enough to play if he has to play, because they've had to use 3 quarterbacks, 2 times in the last 3 years, not 3 times in the last 2 years, 2 times in the
Shanahan
last 3
says
years.
They want the best guy they can afford.
Right. So I think that's where Stidham is going to be a guy that is the guy that comes in, Larry, this veteran has to be 3 things. 1, he can't be a guy that has enough credibility that he somehow overtakes Purdy or Lance in this equation, right? 2, he has to be cheap enough too, where you don't pay him where he's going to be a guy that overtakes something like that. He has to be very minimalistic on his effect on the cap because he's this third quarterback, right?
Right.
And then 3, he still has to be talented enough to do exactly what you just said was your observation from the NFC Championship game, which is that the 49ers need a bunch of quarterbacks who are capable of playing. And so he has to be capable of playing in the NFL. There's a bare minimum amount of guys that are even capable of doing that at a competent level, even on this team with these weapons. So when you look at those 3 factors, which are the 3 factors, to me, Stidham is the only one that fits probably all 3 of those. And I don't even know, because like Mark Pfeiffer, or maybe Pfeiffer is saying, Stidham played well at the end of the season. And Stidham has some talent. He throws the ball
he's
very,
a lot
very
more mobile
well.
than he throws the ball great. He's got more mobility than you think. And the Raiders are probably going to go after Aaron Rodgers.
Right.
My guess is they'll go after Rodgers. We got this one says Sudfeld stinks or sucks. But
whoever
that's
the third
list.
quarterback is, the reputation is going to be there for suck, right? Because he has to be below Trey Lance and
Someone
Brock
says
Purdy.
Danny Dimes, but Danny Dimes is too good.
He would start on this team.
I mean, that doesn't fit. To me, Dalton probably makes sense just because he is 35 and he's been there, done it. I could see like the other guy that's kind of interesting to me if they wanted to go for a little bit more of like a true 3-way competition for the starting job did Marcus Mariota kind of work his way out of Atlanta towards the end of the year? It seemed like
I see no chance Shanahan gets Mariota.
Do you think Mariota may get moved? I don't know. That one seemed weird.
Maybe Larry, but Mariota can't play quarterback.
He is mobile. Against the Niners, he was 88% completion percentage.
He can run, Larry. He can't play from the pocket. And
I liked him in that game. He looked great against the Niners.
He still
but it's one game.
Still has that funny little pushing motion where he pushes the ball at people.
Well, but you're looking for the best player who you can fit under the cap.
I agree.
What about?
I just feel
here's
like
another
Mariota
idea.
feels so anti-Shanahan that.
Is there today? I'm watching the Pro Bowl whatever event.
Tyler Huntley.
My God, they should just get rid of that event. Hand these guys a certificate and a gift certificate to Chili's and be done with it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I mean, my God, to have these guys playing any of these events is just so stupid, but whatever. But my kid was watching and they had Derek Carr and they're like, yeah, Derek, you look really good. You're throwing the ball really well. And he's like, he made some comment like, cause I'm getting out of here. It's like I'm in the events in Vegas, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm good at throwing it in Vegas because I'm leaving Vegas or something like that."
He can't take a joke. Gosh,
yeah, I know. But here's the thing about Derek Carr that's interesting. Derek Carr I think if Derek Carr's smart, he knows he needs a career reset in the worst way. If he wants his career to be anything more than about greenbacks, he needs to get serious and have a game plan. What do you think of Derek Carr, who may even own a house here in the Bay Area because the Raiders were here forever? He's got ties to the area. He went to Fresno State. He knows how good Shanahan is. What do you think? I mean, he can. I mean, if I'm Derek Carr, you described a quarterback and the Niners situation with their weapons and Shanahan, this defense. Many quarterbacks should really be interested in this. If you're Derek Carr, would you be interested?
Oh, 100%. I just think Derek Carr is kind of unacquirable for the price. Derek Carr doesn't strike me as a guy that's just going to give up the money and the lifestyle and everything. He's got a little bit of diva to him too with the comments he made. From just a pure football perspective, Larry, I know a lot of people don't like Derek Carr and Niners fans have like an extra dislike to him because he's a Raiders quarterback, but the dysfunction he went through as the Raiders quarterback, when you look at his talent, if you put the Niners structure around him and give him Shanahan, he wouldn't win an MVP, Larry, but his numbers would be top of the league. He would be throwing, 35, 36, 37 touchdowns, 8, 9, 10 interceptions with 70% completion, 4,300, 4,400 yards. He would put up high level numbers that you would say, oh, Derek Carr is, the 6th, the 8th or the 9th or the 10th best quarterback in the NFL. And so Carr he would be the most talented quarterback the Niners have had, right? He's more athletic than Jimmy. He's better on the move than Jimmy. He's got a better arm than Jimmy. He's more gifted thrower than Jimmy.
But you're saying he's going to go somewhere else for
But
bigger money.
Larry, he's going to go for better money. The Raiders are probably going to look for some level of picks because no matter what you say right now, there aren't 32 starting level quarterbacks in the NFL. And as bad as he was this year, Larry, Derek Carr is probably still looked at as a, top 15, 16, 17-ish starter, which is probably worth a lot. Heck, I don't even think Jimmy Garoppolo, I think part of Shanahan making that comment is it's not even a thing on Garoppolo. I don't think the Niners are going to be able to afford Jimmy Garoppolo this year. He played
he's
good
gone.
enough when he played for the
gone.
Niners that, somebody's going to pay him a good amount of money. So
no question.
I 100% feel like the same thing is going to happen with Derek Carr, who's better than Garoppolo.
Does Kyle Shanahan, do you think that Kyle Shanahan still has a strong belief in Trey Lance? Do you believe that Kyle Shanahan believes that Trey Lance, he described him today or yesterday as a dual quarterback. Yeah. And obviously he doesn't see him the same as Purdy. Purdy's a quarterback. We know he has mobility.
Yeah.
But Lance is not a quarterback. He's a dual quarterback in Kyle's mind. And I bring this up because, I kind of think if you had asked me before the draft, who do you think, Larry, Kyle Shanahan likes of all the quarterbacks? I would have said, and I talked to Steve Young about this, Zach Wilson.
That's who I said too. That's who I said would have been Shanahan's ideal quarterback.
Wilson is persona non grata for the New York Jets, and Robert Saleh has got to get rid of him and figure out something new. Do you think if the Jets offered Kyle Shanahan Zach Wilson for Trey Lance, do you think Kyle Shanahan would do it? Do you think he would be tempted to do it?
I think they would think about it for sure. I agree with you. Benjamin Albright also reported that, or he didn't report it officially. He said that, and he's known to be connected to the Niners. He said that at the time during the draft. We know Shanahan has great relations with John Beck, as evidenced by Trey Lance, stopping working with Quincy Avery and going and working with those guys, Tom House, John Beck. And we know that John Beck is the guy who basically revived Zach Wilson's career at BYU. And so there were way too many connections there. I agree with you, Larry. But I don't think they would do it. The perception of the move would be so bad. There's not the perception.
It would have to be Lance for Zach Wilson, and because Zach Wilson is persona non grata,
deal, right?
And Trey Lance is not.
Is just nobody knows, right? He's unknown.
We don't know about Trey Lance, but we do know this: every guy in the room doesn't want him out of the room. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Exactly. That's a great way to put it.
Also, really, if you look at things, even though it's New York, what the Jets have, which is they're a bad team trying to establish themselves, is a total wide open ramp up. It makes no
sense for Trey Lance.
Well, but I mean, it's the 49ers are trying to win.
So are the
Trey
Jets,
Lance
Larry.
is raw. And so you know what? Can you win with Trey Lance? I don't know.
Larry Saleh's fired next year if they don't make the playoffs.
I know, but what I'm saying is he can't bring Zach Wilson back. So what's he going to do?
Oh, 100%. I agree with that, but I don't think their answer is exactly
they
what
need a
Lee
veteran
said.
today,
it's Derek
and
Carr,
they need a new young guy.
It's Derek Carr, Jimmy Garoppolo. You find the veteran today. You worry about the young guy later, Larry. You find a way to make the playoffs because you don't worry about the young guy that Robert Saleh is not going to be around to coach if they're not making the playoffs this year.
I'm not saying I'm rooting for it. I'm just saying,
Larry, I feel like what you're talking about makes sense if Robert Saleh was hired today. But the fact that he's 2 years in, the fact that they were actually a really gifted
what are they
team this year,
with Zach Wilson?
You got to just keep him around for this year, Larry. If you make the playoffs this year, then you decide what you're going to do. You have to find whether it's Derek Carr, Jimmy Garoppolo, whichever one of these veterans you can bring in that'll give you some sustainability, some credibility, and you say, well, if we think we can make the playoffs with this guy, you go get him. Even if it's Rodgers, Larry, but the young guy, Lance makes no sense. They have so much pressure to win. To me, Trey Lance's ideal situation to play is actually a place that has no expectations to win, because then he can go out every week and he can work on his craft.
We only got 5 minutes. Let's finish fast here. Give me the one free agent on the 49ers that you would want to re-sign. One.
Emmanuel Mosley.
Didn't have to think about it.
No, I've been saying it from the beginning.
Over Jimmy Ward, over Aziz, over Ebukam, over Jordan Willis. Over
I think Emmanuel Mosley will come back for a 1-year deal. I think he'll sniff around and he'll come back for a 1-year deal and try and go make the big money the next offseason. Because he was going to parlay himself into a double-digit million payday on a long-term deal the way he played the first 6 weeks of this year.
Give me the one one free agent that you absolutely will be thrilled if he signs elsewhere. The
Mike
one guy
McGlinchey.
you want to see go somewhere
Mike
else.
McGlinchey, and it's not actually for the reasons anybody else thinks. It's just because I feel like that contract is going to be large. And I think because of Mike McGlinchey's perception in Ninerland, Larry, I think people are going to be blown away at how much money he's going to get offered this offseason. But it goes back to the conversation we were talking about with the bad offensive linemen in the NFL. There's not that many good ones. Mike McGlinchey is a starting right tackle with a ton of experience. And, he was a former top 10 overall pick. He's more gifted than a lot of people. He's very good in the run game, Larry. I just feel like he's going to be too expensive, and I don't want the Niners chasing that number with him. Let him sign somewhere else for that much money.
Vic Fangio formally accepted the Dolphins defensive coordinator position today. What do you do for defensive coordinator? You want the Washington defensive backfield coach who's a fast riser? Do you want Steve Wilkes, who's got head coaching experience? Do you want Chris Kocurek? The ESPN reporter Anderson reported that
he's getting
the Niners are considering offering Kocurek the defensive coordinator position. He's stated, by the way, that he doesn't want to be a coordinator, and he's also from Texas, played at Texas Tech. A lot of talk that maybe D'Amico will take him, but the Niners love him, and their defensive linemen swear by him. Would you make Chris the defensive coordinator? If not, who's your DC?
Yeah, I don't have a large opinion on it. It's really who Shanahan thinks is the best communicator and leader. I'm not that concerned about that because he's shown he's very good at picking coaches and evaluating coaches. Larry, I feel like we've had this conversation 3 times and my answer has been consistent. And Shanahan kind of said the same thing, right? I feel like they've already established their culture on defense. They already have, their system, their philosophy, how they want to play. Each coach is going to add its own wrinkles, right? Salah's version of this defense was slightly different from D'Amico, who called it a different way. A lot more of those creepers, sim pressures, a lot more looks with the double A gap, a lot more twists and stuff up front compared to Salah. So he had his own wrinkle on this defense. And similarly, I think Steve Wilkes or Chris Harris, whoever gets hired, is going to do the same thing. But structurally, it's going to remain this same defense. It's going to remain the same because it's like the Baltimore Ravens. That's the example I always bring up, early 2000s. How many different coordinators did they have? Marvin Lewis, Dean Pease, Wink Martindale, Rex Ryan, and all of those guys had their own wrinkle, but structurally Baltimore's defense has always been, what it's been. Actually, this year with Mac McDonald was the first change, right? That they became this heavy zone coverage team. They used to be a lot of pressure, a lot of man coverage, and that's what they would do between Rex Ryan, Wink Martindale, those guys. And so I look at the 49ers the same way, where they're going to be this heavy zone dropping, sprinkle in some man, a lot of man match, a lot of cover 3, cover 4, and a lot of 4-man pressure, and try to dominate the game with your defensive line. It keeps their linebackers cheap. It keeps their secondary cheap. I think they're going to continue to play defense this way. And so I think that because of that, the culture and philosophy transcends the coordinator, Larry. And I don't think it matters as much. And I don't expect them to hire an absolute flop, right? A guy who, doesn't do the job or can't communicate or whatever. And then I feel like they're going to hire someone, whether it's Harris or Wilkes, that's just a grinder, that's competent. And I wouldn't be shocked if whichever one of those guys gets hired as a head coach in 2025. And you and I are sitting there, whatever, Thursday in 2025. Hopefully I have a window by then and some decorations, and, your setup remains as good as it is. But yeah, hopefully at that point, and we'll be talking about this exact conversation with a couple new other names.
D'Amico could take some coaches. He could take some players. I have a feeling, Houston. My guess is Houston's cap is wide open because their talent on their roster is pretty bad, and I think the Niners could lose quite a few players to the Texans this offseason. I think it's
I
very,
think
very possible.
Alshire is the one I think that's gone for sure.
Which
Especially because
sucks because he's great.
D'Amico was his linebacker coach and all of that. I feel like that's the first player he's gonna bring along with him because he's also gonna fill in right there, right? We saw a glimpse of it last year when Fred Warner missed that game against Seattle with Alshire as the middle linebacker, and he had 15 tackles and 2 forced fumbles, and it was one of the great games we've seen from a 49ers linebacker. Unfortunately, they lost at Seattle, but I think him and D'Amico, they're gone together. It's like Rex Ryan taking Bart Scott to Baltimore.
We're closing in on 13,000 subs. If you're in the chat right now and you've yet to sub, please like and subscribe. The like helps people find the show and helps the algorithm. And the subscribe, of course, will, every time anybody who subscribes to our show, every time we go live, you'll get an alert that we're going live. We also have club
They got
members.
to turn on the bell for that, Larry. Tell them to turn on the bell.
That's right. Click the bell for that. And also you can be a club member for $4.99 a month. And I think we've got now 80 club members right now.
Ooh, I might have to start a club. Do you think people would join my club, Larry?
You might have to go with the club. The club, I do a club video. I did one this morning. If you're in the club, you got that video.
What you talk
Vish,
about?
Last question.
You can't tell me, can you?
What's that?
That's only for the club. You can't tell me what you talked about.
That's right. Yeah, it's all very secret.
Right.
Oh, very secret. Okay. Have you looked at the free agent list? Is there any free agent on another team that you are eyeing? And if so, who? And would you allow me to give you? I did a deep dive last night on free agency.
All right.
Can I tell you who I want?
Yeah, give me who you want and give me a list of a couple names to choose from because I haven't looked at free agency.
So I'm expecting McGlinchey to leave. And I think the Niners need some offensive line help, but it is a really slim pickings offensive line free agent group. I like 2 tackles, Caleb McGarry from Atlanta and Andre Dillard from Philadelphia. Both of them are 27. Dillard was a former number 1 pick. And I like the Chiefs guard. Watch him in the Super Bowl. He's a backup, Nick Allegretti.
Okay.
He's a friend of mine, but he's a former wrestler. He played at Illinois. He's 26. He can play guard or right tackle or center. He's very versatile, smart, academic All-American, tough kid. As I said, former wrestler. So those are the 3 offensive linemen: Caleb McGarry, Andre Dillard, Nick Allegretti. The quarterback that I think I would go for would either be Jarrett Stidham, if I wanted to go with a young up-and-coming guy, or Andy Dalton, if I really thought Purdy and Lance were going to be healthy, and I just want a third guy who I think can win, but also who I could get for $5 million. And Andy Dalton's 35. I think he's at a point now he could really help them. So I like Andy Dalton as the quarterback. I think they need some defensive backfield help. I'd like to re-sign Jimmy Ward, but Sean Bunting, who was Murphy Bunting for Tampa, he's a free agent, and also Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, the Eagles safety. I like Chauncey Gardner-Johnson a ton. And then 3 defensive linemen that I really like. And to me, this is a major need with Kinlaw, just bottoming out in that Philly game. I'm going to take a hard look at Poona Ford, Deron Payne from Washington, and Colin Saunders from the Chiefs. And I like all 3 of those guys, powerhouse guys who could hold the point and are good at the point of attack. So I've looked at, the receivers and the tight ends, and there's running backs, and there's other positions. But to me, defensive backs, offensive line, and defensive tackle are the spots that I'm really honing in on. And those are the guys I kind of like. So
I agree with you. And so you said if there's one big signing, right, that I want them to make.
Yeah.
In terms of under the radar, there's a Chiefs defensive lineman I like, Derek Nottie. He's a big
Florida
guy,
State.
physical, right? Really big guy. I think they need that in their defensive line, just some size and physicality. But in general, if there's one guy I would like them to sign, and ideally it would be on a shorter term deal, but I would love for them to get Yannick Ngakoue this offseason. I don't even know.
Pass rusher.
Yeah, I don't know if Yannick Ngakoue is going to even be, envisionable in terms of the price tag, right? But he had 9.5 sacks or 10 sacks.
Great motor. Loved him at Maryland.
Right. he's perfect fit. He's played in this scheme. He's the exact kind of edge player that they lack. Maybe Drake Jackson can become a version of, an Ngakoue, an explosive speed rusher with the bend to get around the edge, but also enough strength to be able to, push tackles back with this bull rush. And that's the guy I would like them to get. I think that would be a game changer for them. I think they're missing. Davenport's another great name, right? And maybe Davenport will be a little more expensive. That's why I was suggesting Ngakoue, who's, a little bit older. But that's another great name. But to me, it's just that they need a game changer to me on their defensive line. If there was one difference I felt watching those two teams, Larry, I felt like Philadelphia had a lot more game changers. I felt like both defensive lines were really good, really deep, but I felt like Philadelphia had more guys.
Hargrave.
They got Hargrave make one play, right? That could make one play that could screw up the game. Than the 49ers, who had two guys that I felt like, okay, if the defensive line is going to make a play, it's going to be one of Bosa or Armstead. And then maybe you throw a Menahue in that conversation, but that one's a little inconsistent. With Philadelphia, I felt like whether it's Reddick or Hargrave or Cox or Graham or Sweat or Robert Quinn, they're all capable of doing something bad. So if there's one name, Larry, and again, I don't even think it's attainable, but if there's one name, a guy that I think would be game-changing if the Niners got him, it would be Ngakoue.
Good call. Vish, everybody should join Vish's channel. Everybody right now, go sign up for Vish's channel. The Vish Kumaran Show is fantastic. We'll be on there again Tuesday. Vish, I got to run. Good stuff, man. An hour in the books. It was the fastest hour in the biz, but you're awesome, man. And we'll talk to you soon.
Awesome, Larry. Thank you as always, and I'll see you Tuesday.
Sounds good. Everybody go join Vish's channel. He's got a great channel. He's an awesome guy, and his content is phenomenal. Phenomenal. All right. Play a couple ads here, and then we're going to slide over and talk to Jesse Naylor on the Krueg Show. It's going to be a whole new stream. It's coming up. It's coming up. A whole new stream is coming up after this on the Krueg Show.
Larry Krueger here for Telmetrics. Thanks to Casey Bateman and the good people at Telmetrics. If you're an occupational therapist, if you're an orthopedic surgeon, a chiropractor, a physical therapist of any kind, Telmetrics is designed for you to use in your practice and will greatly benefit your patients. Telmetrics uses computer vision and artificial intelligence and provides a platform for outpatient rehab therapy services, both in the clinical and the telehealth environments. So using Telmetrics can improve your patient's experience and much more. So for all your sports injury needs, or if you're a physical rehabilitation specialist of any kind, make sure you use telmetrics.co, Telmetrix.co. And thanks to Casey Bateman and all the good people at Telmetrics for being a proud sponsor of the Krueg. I'd like to thank our sponsor, Dan Coach Emilio. Dan is a buddy, and he is a phenomenal retirement planning specialist. And you can contact him today at securemoney.com or at his number, 925-628-9966. There's a lot of uncertainty in our world right now, and you want to make sure that your money is secure. That is the key. Danny's got 25 years of experience, born and raised right here in the Bay Area, and he can help you get an immediate 10% premium bonus on your principal retirement account. So give him a call, 925-628-9966. He'll make an appointment with you, and you can sit down. It's not a one-size-fits-all kind of a deal. He'll consult with you and come up with a strategy to get you going to where you want to be. Once again, 925-628-9966, securemoney.com on the web. And thanks to Dan Coach Emilio and all the people at Secure. And thanks to Tony Cassera and the good people at Cassera's Italian Menswear. They are housing the Krueg Show t-shirts, and they're a proud sponsor of the show as well. The Krueg Show t-shirt, the Krueg Show podcast t-shirt is available there at their store in Dublin. Their address is 7372 San Ramon Road in Dublin, California. And go see Tony Cassera and get yourself a Krueg Show t-shirt and support the show. And special thanks to our sponsor, New York Style Italian Sausage. That's right, NewYorkStyleSausage.com is their website. Phenomenal product, whether it's the breakfast sausage, the Italian mild, the Italian spicy, the chorizo. You cannot go wrong with New York Style Italian Sausage. Once again, NewYorkStyleSausage.com. Often imitated, never equaled.
All right, that does it for this live stream. Join me in literally 2 minutes on the Krueg Show. Also, join me after Warrior Basketball. Eric Baller, Bay Area Baller, Eric Price, Rye, and Dan will join us. Warriors taking on Denver tonight. Will come on at roughly 9 o'clock or so for another live stream. But join me right now. Jesse Naylor is going to join me, and we're going to talk a little Niner football. I'll look for that. I'll be tweeting about it coming up next, and join me on the Krueg Show. And until then, thanks to everybody, and we will see you next time. And of course, thanks to our new title sponsor, Pig and a Pickle, with 2 locations, one in Emeryville and one in Corte Madera. It's the best barbecue in the Bay Area. Thanks to Damon and Mary for being proud sponsors of the Krueg Show.
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared of. Careful, you gon' get exactly what you asked for. Careful, whatever you bring me getting handled. I answer to no one, I don't need to hassle.